communicator has sent the message and that the individual who is receiving it has received the message. The need for feedback should be clearly understood. Feedback is the return of a part of the message to the sender with new information. It regulates the transmission and the reception. So it says, I have received your message, I've understood your message, and now I'm giving you feedback so you can make sure that I've understood your message. There's no feedback in one-way communication. Such communication involves passing ideas, information, directions, and instructions from higher management down the chain of command without asking for a response or checking to see if any action has taken place. It's not enough to assume that the message has been received. For communication to be effective, a two-way process must exist. The second barrier is a mental barrier, or noise in the mind. The mental barrier, if the sender thinks he or she knows best or is an expert on a subject, then he or she may expect the receiver to accept the message. So even if the receiver provides feedback, the sender is still likely not to be tuned in or to find it a challenge because his or her expert opinion is being challenged. The sender may have some emotional misconceptions about what is going on, and this can interfere with the way the message is received. Words are tools to facilitate conversation, and Dr. Rudolf Flesch, a specialist in words and communications, suggests a way to break through the word barrier. Use familiar words in place of the unfamiliar. Use concrete words in place of the abstract. Use short words in place of long words. And use single words in place of several words. Oftentimes when we're communicating, we may use acronyms, we may use a conversation that is significant to our organization and may not be significant to the person receiving the information. So when in doubt, keep it extremely simple. Time and space is another barrier to communication. More and more we see virtual teams, physical separation, geography where the manager is working late at night and maybe sending an email one way. It may not have the desired effect. The sender, if he or she is sending an email, cannot watch the receiver to see what they are interpreting or even if they are paying attention. So it's really important when important information needs to be imparted to consider the time and space barrier. Quality of relationships, this is a really important barrier and probably the most significant barrier in hindering communication between people. The relationship between the people involved in a communication process is often the greatest barrier to the effectiveness of communication. If the relationship between the people participating in the communication is good, the communication has a greater chance for success. This is true whether the communication takes place in oral or written format. In today's world, we are working in a culturally diverse workplace, and we need to respect that the quality of the relationship between the sender and the receiver determines to a great extent the ability of the person transmitting the message to penetrate through the communication barrier. Next, we're going to check on our listening. So this is an exercise called Are You Listening? In this exercise, you are an executive coach and your client is a director of operations. I'm going to play the role of the director of operations and I'm telling you my story. This is a situation where I missed out on a promotion, and what I want you to do as I'm telling you my story is to jot down what you think is important. So number one, you're listening to me tell my story, and then secondly, you're jotting down anything you think is important. So Coach, thanks for meeting with me today. I'm extremely upset at not being selected for the VP Operations role. I just can't believe it. I've been in this job for 5 years, and I really feel that I've proved myself. And now I've simply been overlooked. I have all the qualifications for the role and my husband's full support for working longer hours and in a more demanding role with significant travel. I'm absolutely devastated at the CEO's decision to go with an outside candidate. How could he? And to top it all, the new VP has come from a director role just like me and from the outside. So it's not as if I can feel better that they hired someone more senior than me. Now, he has more experience as a director, but still, I'm really ticked off. My husband was counting on me getting this promotion, so he's really disappointed, and it really stalls a lot of our personal plans and our financial goals. I guess I was counting on the salary increase and also had my peers' support, so now I have to go back to the other directors with my tail between my legs and tell them I didn't get this job. It's just downright embarrassing. I feel like I have been discriminated against, and it's really hard for me to get my energy, drive, and focus back. It's just not fair. And I guess for those of you in HR, these are the kind of stories you're listening to every day. So let's go to the next slide, and let's talk about what are you listening for. In terms of the way we listen, you will notice that some people listen specifically for facts. Others listen for emotional content, and then there's others of us who listen for personal information. So in this exercise, you can learn about what your natural style of listening is and what you listen for. So if you listen for things like, I'm extremely upset, that would be emotional. If you listen for things like devastated at the CEO's decision, emotional. If you listen for things like, I was counting on it and I'm disappointed, very emotional. If you listen for things like, I've got to go back with my tail between my legs and be embarrassed in front of my peers, that's very emotional. Those are all very emotional statements and usually preempted by the word feel or an emotional word. If you listen for facts, you may have heard that I was not selected for the VP role. You may also have noted I was in the role for 5 years. You may have noted that I had the qualifications for the role, and you may also have noted that the new director has more experience in the director role, and that's why he was promoted to VP. You will know that I'm disappointed about not getting a salary increase. These are all the facts of the situation. Now, if you're a person who intuitively picks up on personal information, you might have picked up on the fact that my husband was counting on this, and I may be dealing with some personal issues at home. You may also have picked up that some of my personal plans and some of my financial plans in my personal life were going to be upset. So based on how you listen, make a note of any key learnings that you have taken away from this. I know when I listen, I tend to listen more for emotion than fact. And this was a revelation when I first did this exercise in a team building. And I found out that I've missed a lot of the facts. So whatever you are not listening for naturally, this can become an exciting opportunity for you to improve your communication skills. So how do we improve our listening? It's all about active listening. This is where you make a conscious effort to hear not only the words that another person is saying, but more importantly, you try to understand the total message being sent. In order to do this, you have to pay very careful attention to the other person. And so that's the first point about active listening. You can't allow yourself to become distracted by what else may be going on around you, or by forming counter-arguments in your head, so that you can make an argument the minute the other person stops talking. You can't allow yourself to lose focus on what the other person is saying. If you're finding it particularly difficult to concentrate on what someone is saying, try repeating their words mentally as they say them. This will reinforce their message. So let's move along and talk about some of the other elements. Paying attention gives the speaker your undivided attention and acknowledges the message. Look at the speaker directly.